Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited for today's video because we're going to be reflecting on my purchases from January and February of 2023. So now that they have been in my collection for over a year, do I think it was worth the purchase? Spoiler alert, January and February purchases weren't my best decisions ever made. Now granted, I've made quite a number of bad decisions in my life, and these wouldn't even rank in like the top 10, but we don't have a lot of the products still in my collection. We're gonna chat through it all today, so if you're interested, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project painting content, palette themed content, or just chit chatting about makeup, I'd love if you'd consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. All right, you guys, before we get started, I would love to know in the comments below, what do you think was your worst purchasing decision you made in 2023 in terms of beauty? Because I feel like some bad decisions were made in 2020, at the beginning of 2023, last year. I was trying to do a quarterly month-long no-buy in 2023, and in January, I didn't purchase any makeup with the exception of some eyeshadow palettes. I didn't count eyeshadow palettes because I love to film and create eyeshadow palette content. But I do have some other like PR products that I brought in as well, and we can talk about it all. So let's start with January of 2023. So in January of 2023, I brought 5 eyeshadow palettes into my makeup collection. A couple of those I did purchase at the tail end of 2022, but they came into my collection in 2023. So those 2 palettes that I purchased at the end of 2022 were the Pat McGrath Subliminal eyeshadow palette. She had like her year-end sale on this, and I am so glad that I brought this eyeshadow palette into my collection. I have really fallen in love with blue eyeshadow over the course of the last year or two, and these 2 shades right here, similar to that green shade in the Pat McGrath Bronze Seduction palette, I feel like works so well as a lid topper for any blue eyeshadow look that I'm just trying to put the finishing touches on and just like really bring the eyeshadow look together. Even though this palette looks extremely boring to the eye, like I look at this even right now and I'm like, wow, I don't know if I've ever seen an eyeshadow palette that looks more boring. It really serves a really great purpose in my eyeshadow collection. This is something, because of the tones in this, I can get away with wearing this to work and still be really comfortable with whatever ends up on my eyes. It's a really beautiful eyeshadow palette, and although again it looks really boring, I'm very happy that I brought this into my collection. So this was a winner. And then I also brought in the Pat McGrath Moonlit Seduction eyeshadow palette, and I really fell in love with this eyeshadow palette as well. In fact, this surpassed my Pat McGrath Bronze Seduction in terms of favorite Pat McGrath eyeshadow palette. I love this flaky, textured, sparkly blue-brown shade. It is one of my favorite eyeshadow shades in my entire collection. I love this quad of shades right here. I will say like these 6, like but this truly is a very special quad of shades, and I'm very happy to have this in my collection. If I had paid full price for these 2 eyeshadow palettes, I don't think it would be worth it. I got these 40% off. I was waiting for her to do 40% off this year, but she only went up to 30 that I saw at least. So I actually didn't purchase any more Mothership palettes. I do not think, even though like the packaging is really luxe and heavy, I don't think Pat McGrath is worth, like 30% off would be like the minimum amount I would need off to purchase, but there was nothing calling to me enough this year that even made me want to purchase at 30% off. But I am really glad that I brought those in, and those I feel confident and happy with my purchases. The other eyeshadow palette that I brought in January of last year that I still do own in my collection is this really beautiful quad from LH Cosmetics. It's just 4 very sparkly shades. I think this quad is really beautiful. It's obviously a complementary eyeshadow palette. It's not something I use on its own, but for just like a quad of 4 metallic sparkly shades, I really like this. All 4 of these I think also make really beautiful inner corner highlights, so a really good companion palette if I'm looking for like colorful inner corners. So I'm happy with this purchase. Now the 2 purchases from January that weren't as good, I ended up purchasing the LH Cosmetics Daybreak palette alongside this quad, and I shouldn't have purchased that palette. I'll post a picture of it right here. I have since decluttered the eyeshadow palette, but it was my first time purchasing from LH Cosmetics, and I figured if I was already on the site ordering something, like, I should order more things. So I didn't really think too long and too hard about that eyeshadow palette, and just like that color story just really didn't speak to me. I know like you guys are probably thinking you just said like how boring the Pat McGrath Subliminal looked, but you love that palette. And I feel like that kind of has, this palette has similar vibes-ish, but I wasn't a huge fan of the LH Cosmetics Daybreak palette. It did not creatively inspire me. It wasn't something I ever wanted to reach for on work days, and I just wasn't excited about it. So that was definitely a waste of my money. And looking back, I think my biggest takeaway from that purchase is, if I'm purchasing on a website maybe that I don't purchase from that frequently, I shouldn't be grabbing extra things or like buying extra things just because I'm making a purchase there. And like, do you guys kind of get where I'm going with that? Like, if I were to order from LH Cosmetics again, I shouldn't like throw a bunch of things in my cart that I wasn't really thinking about just because I rarely order from the site and I'm like wanting, I'm not even really wanting, but thinking like, oh, well, if I'm already ordering something, I may as well grab other things so that it can all come in one order. That doesn't make sense. So that was not a great purchase. And then the other palette that came in was the Charlotte like Dazzling Eyes palette, and that actually came in my Beautylish Lucky Bag. So it wasn't like I specifically sought out and purchased the Charlotte Tilbury eyeshadow palette. I wasn't a huge fan of my Lucky Bag 2023. I will say, overall, I think I've decluttered just about everything that I got in that Lucky Bag, which I mostly just buy the Lucky Bags because I have so much fun unboxing them and creating the content. Now this year I was really happy with my Lucky Bag, so that worked out well for me. But overall, in terms of like me getting use out of the products in that Lucky Bag, probably not like the smartest decision on my end. So the palette that came in that box for me ended up being a no-go, and I ended up decluttering that as well. Moving on to February, we had more poor decisions that were made. So let's get into my purchases. I ended up purchasing 3 beauty products in the month of February. Two of them have since been decluttered, and those 2 products are actually both from NARS, which is kind of shocking because I do really like NARS products overall, but I purchased the Lunar Beauty, the light reflecting powder. I thought I had heard good things about the light reflecting powder, and as I was reading reviews, it sounded like it might be similar to the Hourglass ambient lighting powder, which I was working my way through that powder, and at that time I hadn't yet made another purchase from Hourglass in a long time and really hadn't decided that I was like ready to support Hourglass again. So I purchased the Lunar New Year powder. That powder was the most firmly pressed powder I think I've ever used. I don't think any powder picked up. And then if I like scratched at it and then picked it up on a brush, it just looked so dry on my skin. It was not attractive in the least. So I ended up decluttering that. I also didn't feel like it had any sort of like light reflecting qualities that it made me look glowy. I just felt like it made me look dry and scaly personally, so I wasn't a fan of that. And then I did end up purchasing the NARS. It came in the same collection as the NARS Rising Orgasm or Orgasm Rising palette, and it was a face palette quad. And I love NARS face palettes. I will go on and on and on and on and on about the NARS face palettes, and I even say they're like all the same. There was something about that quad of shades that was like almost an exact replica, like literally almost an exact replica of a different NARS 6 pan that I had. And so I decided to declutter that because I was like, I don't know, if it was a NARS 6 pan face palette, I may have kept it, but because it was a quad and I literally felt like I had all the shades and I just wasn't as excited about that quad of blush shades, I decluttered it. Definitely not a smart purchase on my end. I understand why I did it because I really like NARS face palettes. And honestly, even if they release another 6 pan palette that has duplicates in my collection, I could see myself purchasing and not being mad about it. But I think going forward, unless it's a super unique quad, I seem to prefer just like having 6 as opposed to 4 in a NARS face palette. I don't know what it is. So not really a smart purchase on my end. And then the last makeup purchase that I made in February of 2023, I purchased this Fenty Beauty Gloss Bomb in the shade Riri when it was like a collab that they did because she was in the Super Bowl or performing at the Super Bowl. Has a cute little football up here. If you don't know, I am like a die-hard football fan. I just love like sports and competition in general, but I love football. This was a great purchase. Not only do I love that it has little football on here, but I absolutely love this lip gloss shade. I also love the Fenty Beauty Gloss Bomb formula, but the shade Riri, you can get, not in like the limited edition packaging anymore, but you can get this shade. And when I finish this shade, I 100% would purchase again. I love this like deeper mauve berry sort of shade. I think it's stunning on the lips, and this was a great purchase. In PR in February of 2023, I did get sent all of the Kaja lip stain keychains, and I only ended up keeping 2 of these. I will say these are not my favorite. And I thought I would just mention PR along the way and like how I feel about any PR that I've gotten a year later as well. I think originally I had kept 4. And then I decluttered 2 more just because I was like, I just don't need all these lip products in my collection. I don't feel like this has like the longest lasting stain ever. And I just don't think these are super impressive. I don't love the packaging either. So will I repurchase these when I finish? No. And I would recommend other lip stains over these personally. And then the other beauty product that I brought in, or makeup product that I brought in, was this Fenty Beauty primer. My sister actually ended up giving this to me. It is the Pro Filter Instant Retouch Primer. This I really, really enjoy. I will say I don't know if I will repurchase this when I finish. I have found over the last year, I really like either a strictly gripping primer, such as the e.l.f. Jelly Pop Primer or the LYS Primer. Or I like a pore filling primer, but my top pore filling primer, and I don't think there's anything else that beats it on the market, is the Tarte Timeless Pore Filling Primer. This is nice because I do feel like it has a bit of a filtered effect, and it does have a nice tacky base, but I think I would prefer, if I want like a grip, I would prefer the LYS. And if I want something that's like truly like a filter on my face or pore filling, I would go with the Tarte Timeless. I do love primers, so I like to try new things. So I don't necessarily know that I would go on to purchase this in a full size, but I am really enjoying this, and I'm glad that I brought it into my collection. So that just brings us to eyeshadow palettes for February of 2023. And there is one eyeshadow palette that I brought in that has since been decluttered, and that was the Colourpop Just Like Magic eyeshadow palette. I'll put it up here. I walked into an Ulta, was feeling like spending money, and purchased this because I was like, ooh, color. And I have just found that I just feel like Colourpop palettes for me are much easier for me to declutter because usually I didn't spend as much money on them. And now that I've really started to buy and try a lot of indie shadows, I just feel like Colourpop isn't going to compete with that ever. And so this palette was just something that I wasn't reaching for at all. I wasn't excited about it. It was a very poor decision on my end. It wasn't something that had really even been something I was interested in purchasing. I just walked by a display and I was like, ooh, this looks pretty. So I don't go in store a lot, and that's part of the reason. I feel like I'm easily influenced by like the end caps and the displays. So definitely a very poor purchase on my end. I did also bring in the NARS Orgasm Rising eyeshadow palette. Some would say this was not a smart decision, but I am not mad to have this in my collection. I feel like I collect the NARS eyeshadow palettes at this point. This is extremely similar to the NARS Summer Solstice eyeshadow palette. And in fact, I prefer the NARS Summer Solstice just a hair more, but I'm happy to have this in my collection because I like the mattes in this, and I really like NARS Lid Topper formula. It's this really, really beautiful, thin, sparkly, just sheen, but like in the most beautiful way. In like a metallic way, but not a metallic way. I don't know how to describe it, but I love it. I know that the one frustrating thing about NARS is that like every eyeshadow palette is limited edition, but again, they kind of just like regurgitate the same color stories. Still, I love NARS and I will continue to purchase their palettes. I think that I'm happy with this purchase. Now, I will say, if I lost this and I was still able to repurchase it, I don't think I would repurchase it because I'm just as happy with my Summer Solstice. But still, I think this was like, I'm not mad at this purchase. One of my best purchases, I feel like, of the year was the Glaminatrix Nearly Natural eyeshadow palette. This is such a beautiful eyeshadow palette, and I've mentioned quite a few times on my channel in the last few months that this has quickly become, if not my favorite, one of my top favorite eyeshadow palettes in my entire collection. I think the matte formula is really beautiful in that it is more buildable, which I sometimes prefer. I don't need like instant extreme pigmentation. That sometimes just does not work for me when I'm creating an eyeshadow look. So I really appreciate that the matte formula is more beautiful, is more blendable, and I think that it builds beautifully. If I said blendable, I meant buildable. But the metallics in this formula, you can literally just touch, swipe on the eyes, and you get the most impactful, punchy, metallic, shimmering, just beautifulness on the eyes, and I love it so much. It is very metallic. Like, I wear this to work, but sometimes it's like, dang, that's like a wham bam metallic in your face. This is perfect for special occasions or just like wanting to feel sparkly, metallic, and pretty. I am so happy with this purchase, and I've since gone on to purchase, I think, every Glaminatrix eyeshadow palette that they have released since. They are one of my favorite indie brands, and I'm very happy with that purchase. And then my last February purchase was the Odenseye collection. Was the Odenseye, what was this collection called? Something World collection? I can't remember. But the collaboration with Makeup Just for Fun, Lauren May Beauty, and Betty Jean. And I'm really, really happy with this purchase. I will say Odenseye is, again, one of my favorite indie brands. I get really excited about all their launches. The only launch that I didn't purchase last year was the newer Christmas palettes, because the color stories just didn't speak to me. But I swear I'm still like kind of wanting to pick them up. I don't know if I could even get them at this point in time. And I did just purchase the newest collabs. I'm still waiting for them to arrive to me because I'm so mad at myself the first time I missed the like Judy, Annette's Makeup Corner, and Tina collab. I'm so mad at myself that I missed out on those. So that's why I'm like, do I need, if I can still get like the Hey Reindeer palette, do I need to purchase it? Because do I need to just like complete my Odenseye collection? I'm not sure. I thought these were all really good. There seemed to be like one shade in the majority of each palette that like just took a little bit more time and effort, but that's okay. I got quite a bit of use out of all of these palettes last year. I think they're really, really fun color stories, and have been excited to reach into them again this year. Again, I love Odenseye, and I feel like I am basically collect their palettes at this point regardless. I love that they have their packaging and their theming. They just put so much time and effort into it. Like, they look beautiful on the shelf as well. So overall, I'm really happy with this purchase as well. And those were all of my purchases in the months of January and February. I'm excited to continue this series. I plan to typically do month by month, but if it's like, for example, I can't remember if April was my no buy month in 2023, but if it was, then I'll just combine April and May. But that is it for January and February of 2023. Always fun to kind of reflect back on your purchases and maybe try and gain some insight into your shopping habits or some takeaways. So I hope that you found this video useful. Thank you so much for sticking around to watch, for supporting me and my channel as you guys always do. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.